Competition can unite us, and competition can tear us apart. I used to run weekly tennis camps in the Seattle area, and each week 6 or 8 kids would show up on Monday morning ready to learn to play tennis. And each day we would start on the court for 90 minutes, then have a snack break, then another 90 minutes of tennis, then eat lunch in the park, go to the pool for about an hour, and end our day with another hour of tennis. So during each 4-day camp, a new group formed over the course of the 24 hours that we spent together. Sometimes this process was smooth the entire week, and the 7 to 9-year-olds got along swimmingly. Other times, not so much. Left to their own devices, children between the ages of 5 to 15 tend to self-select by gender, with all of the boys playing together as a roving pack and the girls pairing up in dyads to play. So when boys and girls who aren't siblings, cousins, or neighbors are put together in an artificial environment such as a week-long tennis camp, things can get a little interesting sometimes. Occasionally there would be little conflicts between the boys and girls, which sometimes had flirtatious undertones. But those were the easiest things to manage, because I would just gently remind the kids that there is no flirting in tennis, and that would pretty much put an end to it. But the most challenging conflicts always seemed to involve the girls. One week there were 3 boys and 5 girls in the camp. And 3 of the girls were friends from school who had regular play dates, and their moms thought it would be fun for them to participate in the same tennis camp. So the 4th girl, who was relatively quiet and had a pleasant disposition, was immediately accepted by the 3 friends. But the 5th girl in the camp, who we'll call Amber, came with some issues, which seemed to be exasperated by the fact that tennis is a game played in even numbers. You need 2 people for singles and 4 people for doubles. And just like your high school makeout parties, things get a little awkward if you have a 5th wheel. So the odd number triggered something primal in Amber, who didn't want to be left out or have to play tennis with a boy. Interactions between Amber and the other girls were getting a little snippy during the first day, and things got real the second day when Amber initiated Operation Blow Pop. At snack time, Amber opened her lunchbox and, feigning surprise, said, "Oh no, I only have 4 blow pops." Then, after unwrapping one and putting it in her mouth, she gave one to each of the 3 friends and looked at the 4th girl and said, "Sorry," in a tone that made it pretty clear that she wasn't actually sorry at all. This is a prototypical example of a phenomenon called relational aggression, a term coined by one of my postdoctoral research mentors, Nikki Crick. So what is relational aggression? Well, instead of trying to hurt someone by physically hitting them or kicking them or scratching them or biting them, a relationally aggressive child will try to inflict pain on a peer or peers by trying to ruin their relationships with the other kids. It's relatively common in primary and secondary school age girls. And by the way, it's also the way that a lot of international diplomacy works. In addition to alleviating hurt feelings, dealing with relational aggression is important because aggression in childhood can be a predictor of bigger problems during adulthood. And the type and severity of aggression during childhood matters. Boys who are physically aggressive as children usually tend to do fairly well later in life, but those who are especially violent tend to not do so well. Likewise, girls who are somewhat relationally aggressive during childhood tend to do okay as adults, but girls who are extremely relationally aggressive during childhood tend to not do as well as adults. But the worst outcomes are among children who cross the gender barrier, if you will, meaning girls who are highly physically aggressive or boys who are highly relationally aggressive are the most likely to have the worst outcomes later in life, academically, socially, occupationally, emotionally, and so on. But kids can be taught better ways of relating to one another and dealing with conflicts. And a sports team is a great context for helping kids work through their shortcomings. Because there's an astonishingly simple and quick and effective way to resolve many interpersonal conflicts, which harnesses the power of social psychology. And it comes from my favorite social psychology study of all time, Sharif's 1956 Robbers Cave study. In this cleverly contrived study, Sharif recruited a homogeneous sample of 11-year-old boys from Connecticut who were randomly assigned to one of two groups. Each group traveled to Robbers Cave in Wilburton, Oklahoma on separate buses. During their drive to Oklahoma, which took quite a while before interstate freeways were built, the camp counselors asked each group to come up with a team name. One busload of boys chose to call themselves the Rattlers, and the other busload dubbed themselves the Eagles. To build solidarity within the groups, the researchers had the Rattlers compete against the Eagles in a series of tasks, including a ball-throwing task, which, unbeknownst to the kids, was rigged to precisely measure accuracy of baseball throws. When they asked the kids to assess their own accuracy and the accuracy of their teammates and opponents, the researchers found that the kids underestimated the accuracy of members of the other group and overestimated their own accuracy and the accuracy of members of their group, especially members who had emerged as leaders within the group. As the Rattlers and Eagles competed against each other in these tasks, within group solidarity increased, morale improved, and group members became increasingly cooperative with one another. But discord between the groups increased as well. So much so that the kids resorted to some pretty creative ways of getting each other. And here we have the greatest sentence in the history of social psychology. The rival groups made threatening posters and planned raids, collecting secret hoards of green apples as ammunition. So maybe William Golding was onto something when he wrote Lord of the Flies. Anyway, hostile signage and well-coordinated attacks on rival groups are pretty good indicators of the level of discord that the researchers were able to create between the Rattlers and the Eagles. Sharif and colleagues were successful in demonstrating that competition can be used to build within-group solidarity and between-group discord. And that was the first of their objectives. The next objective was to see if they could then use competition to make peace between the groups and create group solidarity among the entire camp, whether the kids were originally Rattlers or Eagles. And Sharif predicted that just as competition generates friction, working together in a common endeavor should promote harmony. So Sharif and colleagues contrived two tasks that would require the efforts of all campers. First, they told the children that the main pipe bringing clean water to the camp had ruptured and that they would need to go on a hike and find and repair the damage. Not surprisingly, the group found the broken water pipe during their hike and all was well for the moment. But then, the bus broke down on the way back to camp. So the camp counselors told the boys that they would need to attach ropes and pull the bus fast enough so that the driver could pop the clutch and get the bus started again. And lo and behold, together, the boys did it. So working together and succeeding in two seemingly important tasks brought the kids together, and rivalries started to disappear. Sharif concluded that working in a common endeavor can in fact promote harmony between two groups who had previously been sworn enemies. The Robbers Cave study proves that competition can bring people together, and it can also divide people and groups against each other. When groups compete against other groups, members of each group tend to become closer, and in-group and out-group biases form, meaning that they think members of their own group, especially the chiefs, leaders, or alphas, are smarter, more talented, and generally better people than members of the other group. But the Robbers Cave study also proves that competition against some objective can bring people and groups together as well. So what do these two stories have in common? The fifth wheel mean girl Amber in the tennis camps and the Rattlers and Eagles at Robbers Cave in Wilburton, Oklahoma. Well, they both involve conflict between kids at camp. In the Robbers Cave study, the discord was artificially created by the researchers, whereas in the tennis camp scenario, the discord emerged naturally when one little girl got scared of being left out. But in both cases, the happy ending was occasioned by the intentional use of a superordinate goal. Someone once said that nothing is more practical than a good theory. And Robbers Cave provides actionable intelligence that I've used hundreds of times on the tennis court. Now, did I have Amber and the other four girls search for a broken water main or tow a bus? No, of course not. What I did is have them play a game. And specifically, I did the following. First, I had all the kids put their tennis rackets in a pile. Now, having paid close attention to who was playing with each racket, I would make sure that the feuding parties ended up in the same pair, without the kids realizing that I had maintained complete control over which kids got paired up together. Then we would play a doubles game which worked like king or queen of the court. The pair at the net were the kings or queens, and the objective of the game was to get to the net and to stay at the net as long as possible. On the other side, the challengers lined up for a chance to take on the kings or queens. If they lost the point, they went to the end of the line. But if they won 2 points in a row, then they became the kings or the queens. And realizing that a superordinate goal is most effective if the participants succeed in the task, I basically ensure that the feuding parties won more than they lost. And I could do this by manipulating the way that I fed the ball. For the two kids who weren't getting along, I'd make sure they got to the net and became king and queen of the court by providing more difficult feeds to the king and queen, hitting ground strokes at their feet or hitting deeper lobs. But when the feuding parties got to the net and became the king or queen, I'd hit nice easy lobs, which would give them the advantage to start each point. For the superordinate goal to work in diffusing an explosive situation between two kids, they don't need to win all of the points, but they need to win enough to feel like they've succeeded together. But superordinate goals don't need to be saved for dicey situations or conflict resolution. They can be fun team-building activities for groups that are getting along swimmingly. Sometimes I would have the 8 kids at each tennis camp play as a team towards a superordinate goal, which was carefully contrived to ensure that collectively the kids would win. Now, in beginners' tennis camps, it seems to work best if you alternate between challenging, sometimes frustrating tasks like learning to hit a backhand ground stroke with less challenging tasks that involve agility or skills that the kids are already relatively proficient in. For example, one game that was particularly popular among the younger kids was called Dinosaur Egg. And in this game, the little dinosaurs had to run through the forest and collect all the dinosaur eggs without getting hit by the dragon fire. If our little dinosaurs did get hit by the dragon fire, they had to return to the nest and wait their turn to try again. So you can probably see that in this game, it was just a matter of time until the little dinosaurs collected all of the eggs. So the kids always achieved the objective together. And each time we played this game, the boys and girls would become a little bit more cohesive as a group. But the boys and girls still didn't want to sit too close to each other and lunch. I told this story quite a few years ago during a job interview, which helped me get my first head high school coaching position. The athletic director, realizing that I was pretty close in age to the kids I would be coaching, asked me how I would resolve conflicts that might emerge between members of the team. So I said my first line of defense would be to construct a superordinate goal and to make sure the feuding parties succeeded together in that task. Now, I'm not sure what coaching or leadership situation you might find yourself in, but I feel reasonably sure that you'll see conflict from time to time. And you might consider using a superordinate goal to bring people together. It worked for Sharif in 1956, and it's worked for me many times on the tennis court. And if you can be creative with your situation, it can work for you as well.